Welcome to Inside Carolina's Game Plan. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Greg Barnes, Jason Staples, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com, and, of course, Dollar Shave Club on the Game Plan. No, we are not waiting till halftime. Somebody in the chat asked, but North Carolina, well, I had it up. I had the Carolina women's game on. It's a close game against UCLA out on the left coast in women's basketball. But we're talking Carolina and Wake Forest. And, Greg, I think this could finally be the game that lives up to your hype. Overall thoughts on Carolina going to Wake Forest. I'm looking at PFF. I'm looking at BCF Toys. Wake Forest is 70th in the nation in points per possession. Carolina is 93rd. It could be. It could happen. 6-3. Your take on this one?
I think Wake Forest, they use two quarterbacks because they can't figure out which one's deserving of being a starter. So I guess it's a conversation we can have about Carolina. But their two quarterbacks, I believe, combined for 64 yards against Virginia. Wow.
And they won.
And then they won. They didn't score a touchdown offensively, and they won that game. So there's hope, Tommy. There's hope. And I'm excited about it. This is going to be a good weekend. Guys, look, a month ago, Carolina was coming off a bye week. They just got plastered by Clemson 38-10. 2 weeks previous to that, they lost down in Florida 34-9. And then, of course, 3 weeks before that, they lost 48-14 against TCU. It was not a good situation just a month ago. And yet here we are talking about just a classic game on the docket on Saturday. It could be a 6-3. It could challenge John Bunning, Al Grove 7-5 back in October of 2005. Special times. And I think it's important to say that North Carolina is in a situation where if you can somehow win two of your three rivalry games against unranked opponents, you can go to a bowl game. And on top of that, let's see, the kid they got today from Penn State, David Davis, 4-star cornerback. I think they have 12 4-stars now. North Carolina's recruiting class ranks 16th nationally. Things are on the upswing. Now, Buck Sanders did a good job with this column earlier this week, as he tends to always do, kind of outlining the rivalry dynamics. And I think Buck pointed out that Carolina has only finished the season with Wake, Duke, and State once, I believe, which is wild. That's a lot of emotion involved. So this could end really well for Belichick, and a lot of those early season concerns and hand-wringing and everybody ready to be done with it. If you somehow can sweep these rivals and end up at 7-5, talk about the momentum going into the offseason. However, if you lose these three games, then all of that midseason improvement goes by the wayside, and everybody's kind of scratching their heads. So I think it's a tall ask to win all three of these games. I think Saturday is probably their best chance, just because Wake has no offense like Carolina, and Duke and State present some offensive challenges. But you got to win the first one. And to win this game Saturday, you get back to 5-5. A month ago, we would not have thought that been possible.
After the first quarter of the Clemson game, I think everybody was ready to blow the place up and blow it all up and start over right then and there. In the first week in October, Jason, a lot of people in the chat already throwing out some score predictions. We'll get to that. Greg mentioned 75. I've said it before. That was my son's first Carolina football game in Kenan Stadium way back in 2005. So it is forever a memory.
Tommy, let me say this. So that was our second wedding anniversary. And so we got married in Lake Lure. So we go to Lake Lure, and the game's on. I don't know if I guess it was a noon game. It had to have been a noon game. And so I'm like, I got to watch this game, but it's our anniversary weekend. It's our anniversary day. And so I got my wife a spa day. And so I go and I find this sports bar down the street. There's like two people in this place for whatever reason. and the game was horrible. I had to convince the bartender to put it on. And I'm like screaming at the top of my lungs at the end of that game because it was 7-5, and all three people in the bar just looking at me like I'm crazy.
Well, here's the question: were you screaming because of who won the game, or were you really just celebrating that it finished at 7-5? That's the real question.
I enjoyed the fact that Carolina won a game holding their opponent to 5 points. And it was Al Grove, so.
Epically, an epic performance there. Jason, I mean, it could be that way on Saturday. Wake Forest beat Virginia because they got 3 fumbles. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Virginia had fumbled 9 times, had not lost any of them. I think they got that number up to 10, and then they lose all 3, or at least 3 of them, to Wake Forest. Wake Forest somehow wins that game, even though they were absolutely brutal on offense. Could we see a repeat? This is the question I tried to ask Belichick on Tuesday. And somebody from another outlet asked him about the Giants job and pissed him off right before I got my question in. Up to this point, he was answering questions, giving a lot of good answers. And then once that happened, he went on to Cincinnati. So he didn't say anything to me other than they need to be more consistent. But let's talk about the offense. How can this offense be better? And to piggyback on a message board thread, I think it was in my column. It was either in my column or your column thread, Greg. The importance of a quarterback coach and how a good quarterback coach makes a difference from somebody as we watch Drake May light it up for the Patriots. Jason, just Carolina's offense. Can it improve this year? Can it improve on Saturday? And why has it remained not good?
So to answer your first question, I think in terms of what do they need to do to get better and all of that, I think mainly they just need to be more consistent.
Which is exactly what he told me. And get louder. So, you're a little bit quiet unless it's just my end. So
that's number one. They need to be more consistent. But it's not just as simple as consistency at one spot or another. It needs to be across the board. And the biggest problem that they're having is that the inconsistency, with the exception of, Greg, I think you in one of our text threads during the season said something along the lines of North Carolina's receiver group is their best group, but they are just a bunch of choke artists. So there's that problem, first of all, of just making sure that when you have chances to score, you score. The offense would have looked better the last 3 outings if they'd just taken advantage of every opportunity to score. So that's number one, is if you have an opportunity to get the ball across the goal line or to just get a first down at the half-yard line and find a way to get the ball across the goal line shortly thereafter, you got to make it pay. You got to actually do that. Beyond that, though, the other problem, though, is that the inconsistency is really coming at the 2 most important spots, and that's at the quarterback position and on the offensive line. And I've said this before. You can deal with a problem at one or the other. It's really, really hard to work around a problem at both at the same time. That's really where you get stuck. And honestly, I'm not sure, given the personnel, given some of the limitations that they have, I'm not sure how much better the offense is going to be able to get the remainder of this season. And unfortunately, I think the remaining 3 opponents are all better than the last 3 opponents. And so I'm not sure if we haven't seen the offense kind of hit its apex for the season the last couple weeks. And Greg, I see you grimacing, but remember, there is a non-zero chance going into this game that we get a duplicate of the famous Frank Beamer holding his arms up as Virginia Tech holds against Wake Forest for that game to end in a 0-0 tie in regulation between Virginia Tech and Wake Forest, and you see Frank Beamer with the score in front of him, Virginia Tech 0, Wake Forest 0, end of regulation, with Beamer celebrating with both hands up. There is a non-zero chance that we can get that picture. That's the one. There's a non-zero chance that we can get that picture with Bill Belichick being the guy holding his arms up, 0-0 going into overtime for a 3-0 type outcome in this game. That's really what I mean. I think just for the sake of art, it's hard not to root for that outcome. a 3-0 overtime game with Bill Belichick celebrating that outcome. I mean, that would, and yes, in the chat, that Beamer moment is the greatest Go ACC moment ever, and probably never to be topped.
I think that may be the origin of hashtag Go ACC, if I remember.
I think it was actually, but and I don't think it will ever be topped. But if there was a chance, if there was an opportunity for that to be topped, it might be this week, because Wake Forest defensively is pretty dang good. They're not bad at all. And
they're the best defense that Carolina is going to play this year.
Probably, yeah.
Really?
I do think they have some weaknesses here and there. I mean, one of the wildest things about this season is that Wake Forest beat Virginia, who was Florida State's first loss, on the same day, a week after. Florida State beat Wake Forest 42-7 in a game that the only way they got 7 was a backup quarterback fumbling the football down into the red zone. Nothing makes sense, I'm just going to say. So, I mean, FSU was able to run all over them and tear them up defensively. Nobody else has done that to Wake Forest this year. They've been pretty good defensively all season, and they've not given up a ton of points. I mean, the most points they've given up, 34 to NC State and 42 to Florida State. The only other game over 30 points was Georgia Tech, and nobody else more than 23. And there's a bunch of games in the teens, couple where they're down below 10. They're a good defense, and where they're best is against the pass. That may be good news for Carolina, because I think they're just short of elite against the pass. They're very good against the pass. I wouldn't say that they're on the elite side. They lack the true one-on-one shutdown guy to be an elite secondary, but they're really good in the back end. And then against the run, they're pretty good. The question is, will Carolina this week be able to run the football well enough to offset where I think they're going to have just a massive disadvantage trying to throw it against Wake's back end. So they're going to have to be, if you want to look at what they're going to have to do this week to be better, run the football. They're going to have to win up front with this sort of retooled, banged up offensive line. Those guys are going to have to win up front in order for that to happen. Is that likely? I'm not going to bet on it.
Looking at it, I mean, I can't believe Nick Anderson's still playing safety for Wake Forest. I mean, he was out there in 2020, and that's he's a good player too now. I mean, his PFF grades are unbelievable. So, Greg, you're the king of the numbers. You put a lot of your numbers in your column for this Carolina offense, in your column about the quarterback and about the OC, and in my column about the OC as well. I mean, where's Carolina's in? Somebody in the chat says, how does Carolina attack Wake Forest's defense? I mean, you got to be able to run it against them, to Jason's point.
Yeah, this is going to sound funny just because of where we're at. But, I mean, this is really kind of like a classic defensive struggle in the NFL type game. It's really going to be a field position game. That's how I think Belichick's going to approach it. The key thing for your quarterback is not to make mistakes. Don't turn the ball over. And try to flip field position, try to give your defense some opportunities. And I think that's how the game's going to be played. I mean, if you watch the Virginia game, Wake Forest game, that's pretty much how Wake handled it. I mean, the only time they really threw the ball is they were trying to take shots down the field just when Virginia kind of assumed they were going to run the ball. And that's really about the extent of their passing game. I mean, if you look at some of their numbers, and we can get into it in a little bit, I mean, even on like short pass plays, they're just not good. And we know what Carolina's done. Carolina's a little bit better in that regard. But it really is making sure you pick up some first downs, try to move the ball, try to run the ball, really play towards field position more so than you ever would suggest that you do at the college game. But that's what this game's going to feel like. That's what it's going to look like. And you're going to see, I would assume, a number of 3-and-outs. But I think that the concern for Carolina more than anything is that Wake Forest has a bona fide, I don't know if I'll go so far as to say star, but they have a really good running back in Damon Claiborne. He's a guy that can be a game changer. And if you want to kind of hitch your wagon to anybody in this game, he's going to be the one. And so I think that's the challenge is you've got to have, Hall or June or whoever to step up and have a big game for Carolina in the offensive backfield to be able to, you don't have to break a massive run, a 44-yard run like June did a couple weeks ago, but at least have some big plays, 7-8 yards where you can move the chain and get into field goal range and then hope that your special teams can win it, because where Carolina has really been good this year is special teams. They've been very solid across the board in that regard.
Jason, one thing that sort of concerns me, we talk about protecting the football, is Gio has put the ball on the ground a fair amount. And you can't do that against this Wake Forest team like we've talked about. We'll talk about special teams too. Somebody in the chat said, and you said punting would be very important, and somebody said McGinnis may be the MVP. Absolutely. And this is in Belichick's wheelhouse. He's going to – I would take a 3-and-out all day over the bad alternative, which we've seen, a fumble or something like that. So, Jason, ending every drive with a kick is certainly the key here. But how does Carolina attack it?
I'm sorry.
I really would want to see it 6-3 just to see but it's not going to be that way. What's Carolina going to do?
So I see this, and the reason I start laughing is you say, how does Carolina attack it? And see, usually with attacking something, you're trying to find a place where you have an advantage, and then you go with that. On this side of the ball, I'm not sure there is one, which is kind of the problem. This is one where I'm not sure that there's a place where you're like, okay, if we can keep going back to that, then we're going to be able to do this. And by the way, that's how Florida State beat this defense. Florida State scored 42 in this defense largely because they have a 6'6", 230-pound wide receiver. Happens to be the son of a guy that I played with at Florida State, by the way, Deuce Robinson. And he had like 200 receiving yards in that game. They just kept going to him, and he just kept mossing guys. And there was just nothing that they could do on that. Carolina doesn't have one of those. The closest is Jordan Shipp. So maybe if you feel like you can get one guy that gets hot as a wide receiver, that you can get a matchup to get some downfield plays where he's going to moss a guy or two, and you're able to get some of those one-on-one wins, that would be a place where you can attack. But, I mean, they're only giving up 3.7 yards per carry, and Carolina's only averaging like 3.9. So, I mean, it's not like one of those places where you're like, okay, there's an obvious place to attack. The place where I think you're more than likely going to see the biggest differences are, and if you're Belichick, you're emphasizing this all week, are turnovers and the kicking game. This game probably gets won there. And, you look at it, neither of these teams is real good punting the football. Tom McGinnis is 63rd in the country in punt average. And Wake Forest's Cal Joseph is 84th. He is literally the last guy listed in the CFB stats punter average. He's the last one on the list at 84th. So, and the difference in their average is about 3 yards. So the best you can do, what you would expect, what you're hoping for, is you end every drive with a kick, and you can hope to try to flip the field a few times with some special team stuff. Maybe you get a kick block. Maybe you get a good return. The real danger is that the best returner in this game is on Wake Forest. Wake Forest won last week against Virginia by returning a punt for a touchdown. You can't let that happen in this game. If Wake Forest returns a punt for a touchdown, that might be enough to win this game. So you've got to be really good in the kicking game, and you have to maximize what your opportunities are. If I'm Belichick and I'm or I'm Freddie Kitchens, aside from having a lot more money, what I'm thinking about coming into this game is I'm trying to find about 3 or 4 shot plays that I like for somewhere between 25 and 40 yards to try to flip the field and get in field goal range, get into the red zone. If I can have a few of those, and if I can just hit 2 or 3 plays down the field, that changes the outlook of this game, especially if I can get up early. Because I'm saying all this on this side of the ball. The other side of the ball, Wake Forest offense ain't all that good either. They're not going to score a bunch of points. So, what's your magic number? What are you looking at in this game if you're North Carolina? How many do you have to score to feel like you've got a good shot at winning? How many do you have to score to think you're gonna win? And that's a good question. What do you think, Greg?
Hold on. We're going there. I gotta pay the bills. Dollar Shave Club. Y'all know how it works. What is it saying, Jason?
From the sink to the stadium.
From the sink to the stadium. If you're a Carolina fan, an alum, a student, or just a person that likes Carolina blue, get your Dollar Shave Club handle here. It's got the Carolina logo on it. You can get it at your local participating stores. It's a great stocking stuffer right there, right side up. There's the box. It's usually on an end cap. You get your close shave, get your head shaved if you want to do it that way. But spend the money on Dollar Shave Club and get your Carolina swag for any Carolina fan in your family. And like I said, it's a perfect stocking stuffer. I mean, what a great time to be alive when you can have a Carolina razor in your hand taking care of business. DollarShaveClub.com will hook you up. Greg Barnes, what's the magic number?
Well, I'll answer that. Then I've got a question for Jason. But if you look at what Wake and Carolina have done in ACC play, they have averaged 2 touchdowns per game each on average, which seems like a lot, to be honest with you. But, I think touchdowns will be at a premium. So I do think red zone defense is going to be very important. Because I really do think, if you score 2 touchdowns in this game, you're probably going to win.
17 was my number coming in.
Yeah, I think that's a good number. If you get to 17, you got to feel really good about your chances. One thing I wanted to ask Jason, and this is something that we've talked about all season long, and Jason, you harped on it earlier in the year for sure. But it's about how long Gio Lopez is holding on to the ball. And one thing that I found interesting, if you just look at when he's kept clean. Now, when you start talking about somebody who's under pressure and they're kind of moving around the pocket, okay, you're going to see some time for maybe holding on to the ball longer than they need to. When you're kept clean, depending on what you're trying to do, you want to be able to get rid of the ball and take advantage of some quick throws to really try to move the offensive long, unless you're trying to take a little bit deeper shot. If you go back to the Cal game, when kept clean, Gio's time to throw was 2.6 seconds.
Wow, that's so long.
Yeah. Virginia, 2.5. Syracuse, 2.9 when kept clean. That's way too long. But yet last week, 2.09, so about 2.1. So that's a big difference from where he had been for much of the season. Was that by design? Was that a coaching change? Or is that something that I'm maybe reading too much into?
Well, I think it was by design. I think some of it also had to do with the defense that they were playing against.
The defensive line was better.
What they were trying to do. I mean, they tried to get the ball out. But yeah, I think some of that was just due to the concepts that they were running, and trying to get it out quicker on some of those. Some of it was him actually just getting it out. So, that's a good thing when that happens. But I don't know how sustainable that is. Now, I do think it's important to put his numbers in perspective. On the season, his average time to throw is 2.96 seconds, right? So if you go down the list of quarterbacks in the country, best quarterbacks, Julian Sand, in terms of top rated guys, 2.87, Mensa for Duke, 2.88, Diego Pavia, 2.84, Aguilar for Tennessee, 2.71, Gleason, 2.78, Fernando Mendoza, 2.59. For me, when you're getting down into the 2.5 area, that's where it should be. 2.59 for Mendoza. Haynes King for Georgia Tech, 2.56. CJ Carr for Notre Dame, 2.60. Stockton for Georgia, 2.67. And then you want to know why one of the reasons why Florida State has 5 losses? Tommy Castellanos, 3.17. So you start looking at that, and none of those guys have anywhere above a 2.9 until you get to Castellanos. And you start going down the list. I mean, Maeva, the guy from USC, is the closest of the really good throwers in the country to what we see from Gio at 2.93. So, and keep in mind, 0.2 of a second in the pocket is a long time. And when you're looking at a half a second to somebody like, Mendoza, that's an eternity back there. So, and I'm getting questions in there. What about CJ Bailey? 2.86 from Bailey. So,
explain why it's important.
The reason that this is important is that offensive lines, just in general, don't protect longer than 3 seconds. And normally, about 2.5 seconds is about where you're going to expect in a college context pressure to start arriving. So if you think about it, a really good defensive lineman at the NFL Combine, his 10-yard dash time, your best 10-yard dash times are going to be like 1.7 seconds from elite, edge type guys. Now, some your Freeney's are a little faster than that. I think he was like 1.53. So that's the fastest that pressure is going to get there. You get a free edge rusher coming off the edge. That is the fastest that a guy can make contact with the quarterback. That's about your distance. You add a block, you add a guy coming, shedding a block and all of that, and you're looking at somewhere between 2.5 and 3 seconds for when pressure tends to show up. The reason that guys like Tom Brady or Peyton Manning hardly ever got sacked in the NFL wasn't so much about their offensive lines. It's that if you look at their time to throw numbers, Peyton Manning was like 2.4. Brady was like 2.4 or 2.5 year in, year out. Well, I mean, if a guy's unblocked, he's only getting there 0.7 of a second before that at best. If you just get a hand on him, then you're at least getting the ball out. And if you're 0.3 of a second later than that, you're giving a guy enough time to compress the throw. Now you're throwing from a muddy situation. Now, there's a guy that might be bothering the throw. All of those other things come into play. And then the final thing is you're talking about timing in terms of throwing downfield. And how many times have you heard me talk about the importance of quarterbacks throwing with anticipation to throw guys open? You don't wait for him to be open. You see, based on coverage and leverage and everything else, that he's about to be open, and you throw to where he's going to be. In order to do that, with the way that most breaks in routes happen somewhere around the 10 to 12 yard mark, well, wide receivers get to that 10 to 12 yard mark at about 1.8, 1.9 seconds in pads. So if you're throwing at 2.4 seconds, that's right after the break at 10 yards a lot of times. That gives you just enough time to be on time. If you're throwing much after that, you're often throwing into coverage. You're throwing after a guy breaks open. So that's why this is really important. The guys that are thrown at 2.5 seconds, those are guys that are often throwing guys open. They're guys that it looks like they don't have pressure most of the time they're throwing because they're just getting it out so fast. And you go, wow, why does it look so easy for him? He's never pressured. They must be really good on the offensive line. And then he's always throwing to open guys. They always are open. Well, it's because he's throwing guys open early. That's why this is so important. And 3 seconds, or 0.3 of a second, 0.2 of a second is the difference there. That makes a big difference.
Yeah, and wanted to reiterate, those numbers I mentioned for Gio were when he was kept clean. And Jason's talking about kind of the importance overall numbers. When you go and you look at Mendoza, for example, when he's kept clean, he's at 2.2 seconds. CJ Carr is at 2.3. CJ Bailey's 2.4. Gio on the season's at 2.6. So, yeah, that's significant. So I think hopefully that's a step forward. You would think they would take a similar approach this week in terms of getting rid of it. I do think there's something very important for Gio maybe that we saw last week and he can build on. And he talked about it in his press conferences this week. But if you look at the big pass play to Jordan Shipp, that was just a little 10-yard comeback route. But if you watch how that play developed, Lopez had a guy in his face immediately, and he threw the ball before Shipp ever cut. And Lopez talked about how this is one of the times where he just trusted that Shipp was going to be where he was supposed to be coming out of that break. And he was. And it turned into 75 yards or whatever it was. That's important because I don't know that Lopez has done that a whole lot. When Jason talks about throwing somebody open, it's trusting that they're going to be where they're supposed to be and then making the throw. How many times have we seen Gio throw a pass and it hits a guy who's in stride, on his hip? That's not where the ball is supposed to be. And we've seen that time and time again. So that particular play, even though he had pressure in his face, and you can criticize the offensive line if you want to, the fact that he was able to get rid of it, he knew where to throw it, and he threw it to where he trusted a guy was going to be, you can still create big plays in those situations. And that was a key play for North Carolina in that game.
Indeed it was. Talking with Greg Barnes, Jason Staples here on the Game Plan Podcast, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Dollar Shave Club. Let's flip the ball. Let's flip it. We need to talk about special teams. We're going to talk about Carolina's defense against Wake. Jason, you said, and we've talked about Wake's offense is not very good either. They do have Claiborne. But Carolina I'll check my comment because Carolina struggled to stop the run when they were supposed to or when they needed to against Stanford. How does Carolina bottle up Claiborne? Because if you can bottle up Claiborne, you leave Ashford and is the other quarterback Purdy.
Yeah.
You leave those guys. I always think Brock Purdy, which throws me off. But you leave those guys having to make plays, Jason. So Carolina's playing against Wake. I feel like if I'm defensive coordinator, I'm stacking it. I'm stacking the box full, completely full, and making sure Claiborne's not the guy getting the flowers after this game.
I mean, you said it. I mean, I've already used a lot of hourglass time on this episode. I don't think I need to say a whole lot more than that. Stop Claiborne, and he's averaging 5.45 yards per carry. Stop him. Force those quarterbacks to beat you. Just be disciplined beyond that. This is one of those play single high coverage. Trust your DBs to win as often as not. Just match when they do throw, and get downhill against the run. And classic example of this. I broke down the Wake Forest Florida State game, looking at the Florida State defense against Wake. There was one play. Wake had it was a play action. They're in the gun, and it was a toss left play action out of the gun. And Florida State's defense is so bad in terms of this stuff, where both safeties on that side of the ball crash down hard. The linebackers are all running towards the play action. Quarterback boots out of there, and the defensive end runs right by the quarterback. Quarterback should have been breathing, through a breathing tube, after that play, with turning right into the edge rusher who was left unblocked. He ran right by the quarterback. You've got a wide receiver who had a reduced split running a cross-country route, just a deep cross across the field, across the whole defense, wide donkey open, about 15 yards upfield. And the quarterback, all he has to do is make a routine throw to your receiver who's out there, and this play could go for 80 because there's not a soul within 10 yards of him. Everybody just overran it. You know how many yards they got on that play? 0. 0 yards. Because the quarterback threw it low behind and kind of toward the dirt, and the receiver got his hands on it and then dropped it. This has been the Wake Forest offense. And when it comes to throwing the football, Robbie Ashford, 3 touchdowns, 5 picks, and honestly, for a good portion of the year, hasn't been as good as those numbers. And Deshaun Purdy can throw the football through a wall, but also won't necessarily throw it to the right people. And doesn't seem to have a whole bunch, he will miss his spots. So force them to throw the football. Force them to execute in ways in the passing game they haven't done in 6 weeks at least. And you're probably not giving up more than 14 points. Simple.
I feel like it's been so long that Carolina's had an effective defense that we almost have to kind of reiterate what that looks like. But always go back to 2013, and that was the year that Carolina started 1-5, I guess is what it was. And everybody kind of threw him under the bus, and then Kareem Martin wakes up midway through the year and becomes an absolute force at defensive end, and it completely changes how the defense looks, because all of a sudden offenses are having to account for him and double team him. And just something like that can have such a significant impact. And what you're seeing with North Carolina now, not only do you have a couple guys in the middle who are quality nose tackles and can clog up space and push the line back, but now you've got a couple of very talented defensive ends in Tyler and Melkart who can do damage and who require the other team to account for them. You're talking about 19 sacks in the last 3 games for North Carolina. And the reason I bring that up is because when you look at Wake Forest's quarterbacks, they want Ashford to be the guy because when he's kept clean, he's pretty solid. He is a disaster when he's not. When he's under pressure, let's see, he's completing 31% of his passes, 3 interceptions, 7 turnover-worthy plays. His grade's a 29.6 under pressure, which is atrocious. So it's really this blend of, okay, well, you want to get him under pressure because he's got a 78.9 grade when kept clean, which is solid. But you've got to make sure more than anything that you're taking away the run game. And so what you really want to be able to do is count on those front 4 guys to be effective like they've been in the last couple of weeks, create havoc up front, and try to get pressure with 4. And then you can allow your linebackers and whatever defensive backs you want to fill gaps in the run game to really limit what Claiborne can do in terms of finding holes and creating gash plays, because the last thing you want to do is send multiple guys and then he's off to the races if he breaks through. So I think that's a key component. And anytime you have defensive linemen, multiple of them who are playing well, that puts so much pressure on the opposing offense, and it makes everybody else in your defense look better. And we've seen that in the last couple of weeks, and that's one of the reasons, even without Dixon on the back end for North Carolina, they have played so much better than I think any of us thought they would at this point in time.
Missed tackles force for Claiborne on the season, 29. You better not miss a tackle with him if you have an opportunity, to Greg's point. Jason, Chris Barnes, their wide receiver, their best wide receiver, he's listed as questionable as well for Wake Forest, and then Claiborne's their second best numbers-wise. Who stands out for Carolina? Who are you giving the MVP to? Is it one of the nose tackles, or is it going to be one of the edge guys, or is it going to be a guy like Simpson or House coming downhill?
Give me Melcart. They I think will continue to struggle with him. He, like you said, Greg, light bulb's gone on there, and that's changed the Carolina defense pretty significantly. And I think we're going to see more of that. This is one of those games where I wouldn't be surprised. This might be a good game for you, Tommy, to project a defensive score.
I was going to say, do the defenses outscore the offenses in this game? That was going to be my hot take.
I think that there is a non-zero chance that happens in this particular game. And one of the reasons is I think Ashford is one of those guys he is a turnover machine once he gets pressured. And I think he's going to be under pressure at different points, and particularly from Melcart. So, real chance that there's something that happens there that you could get some sort of return. But the thing is, Gio has also turned the football over some this year when he's been under pressure. So, yeah, there's a real chance that if you count immediate points off turnovers, like let's say a field goal after a turnover as a defensive points, I think that the answer to that question might end up being yes.
So let's go. Short field scores created by the defense or defensive touchdowns will outscore the offenses this week. Do we all agree on that? Are y'all seriously going to take the under? What is the under, like 42 and a half?
I think the under 38.5, and I think the under hits.
Because you never really ever take the under, right? Do you think the under hits 38.5, Greg?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. We're gonna see.
I think an under of 31 would tempt me.
I really think the only way it doesn't hit is if there's significant turnovers. And if you look at what Dickert has done ever since his Wyoming days, his teams have been very aggressive, and they've done a really good job of creating turnovers. They forced a ton of fumbles, and they always have. Wake's tied with Carolina for most forced fumbles this year. So that kind of speaks to his aggressive mentality in terms of getting hands on balls and just trying to create havoc and turn the ball over. So I think if you see some turnovers and that kind of gets contagious, you can see some short fields, and that obviously makes it easier to score. If that happens, I think you could see some not a big number, but you can see certainly higher than that 38. But if these teams play clean offense without turnovers, I don't think there's any way it gets close to 38.
Now, here's the question. What do you think the likelihood of these two teams playing clean against these two defenses actually is?
Well,
is it 0? It's not much higher than 0.
Not necessarily, but I think it's good. I think because both of these coaches are going to be very conservative. These are both defensive-minded coaches. I don't think they're going to be taking a lot of risks. Seriously, if you look at Wake and what they did last week against Virginia, and they took a few shots down the field when they thought they had an advantage. But other than that, they really didn't do anything in the passing game. They were really content just to kind of run the ball, especially after the special teams touchdown.
So over-under punts in the game combined.
Combined. Let's see. There's probably going to be 24 possessions.
Oh, I don't think they're going to be that many because I think they're going to run it.
Yeah. So 20 possessions.
Let's go with 22 possessions, 21 possessions, something like that.
So 14 punts.
Over under 14.5 punts.
I'll go with the under, but
just barely.
That's because I think we're
12
going
and
to
a
see
half punts.
Oh.
This is going to be great.
I'm going to go with the over. I think it's 13 punts in this game.
Look, like you said about Dickert and like Belichick, he don't care what happens as long as the scoreboard's in their favor at the end of the game, and that's exactly how people ought to look at it.
Yep.
That's all that matters, because that 7-5 win back in 2005 counted just like a 40-0 win in there. Let's get into let me talk Johnny T-shirt as I always do. Go to Johnny T-shirt online, Johnny T-shirt in person on Franklin Street, and get your swag for Christmas. It's coming, and they've got the sales, they've got the gear, they've got all your needs as a Carolina fan. 10% off if you're an Inside Carolina Premium subscriber. Look, folks, I've been preaching this, and this is a good time to show it again. There's a QR code on your screen if you're watching on a big screen. Click on it, go to InsideCarolina.com and get your premium subscription. You get some Greg Barnes premium stuff. You get some Jason Staples premium breakdowns, which were fantastic this week. Tyler Thompson, long arm teach tape, all that stuff. Jason Staples is premium on there. And you get our message boards, which are a premium affair now at InsideCarolina.com. It is worth every penny you spend. It is worth the time you spend on the site to get the information from these guys and many more. Basketball recruiting, football recruiting, all the good stuff at Inside Carolina. Predictions. I'll go first. Defensive touchdown for each team. And it's going to be 18-13. I think Carolina figures out a way. 18-13. I don't know how to get to 18, though. Let me think. Touchdown, 2-point conversion. No. Touchdown, 3 field goals and a safety. I don't know. 18-13 Carolina is my prediction. Greg, you're up.
I think Claiborne's going to be the difference maker in this game. I think it's going to be competitive. I just think he's probably the only difference maker on the field that's proven. And so because of that, I've got Wake winning this one in a nail biter, 13-9.
All right, 13-9 for Greg for Wake. I'm 18-13 for Carolina. What do you got, Jason?
Yeah, I'm closer to Greg on this, but I think actually between the two teams, I think Carolina might be actually less likely at this stage to. And I know, between the two teams, Carolina actually has the worst turnover margin, mostly because of the -3 against Cal and -2 against Virginia. But I think they're going to find a way to get Ashford to get a turnover or two there. And I think that's going to be the difference in the game. For once, I'm actually going to differ with Greg Barnes on this. We're actually going to go, we're backing different horses this week. I think Carolina breaks through with a win in this game, but I think it's close, and I think it's a Greg Barnes style. Greg, you might lose your voice shouting after this one. I'm going to go with North Carolina 13, Wake Forest 9.
I think, I got a feeling this game's going to be like 35-28 or something crazy like that.
No chance.
Not
No
the
chance.
only way that happens is if you're looking at like 5 pick sixes.
But guys, think about this. If Wake wins, or if Carolina wins this game and beats Wake, they're going to be 5-5 going into the final 2 games of the year against Duke and State. That's incredible.
Got to win one.
Yeah.
Just figure out how to win one, and they will be absolute bloodbaths. This one's going to be a bloodbath in Winston-Salem. We'll see what happens with it. Let me ask a final question. Let's go hourglass, but I do want to address it. Somebody on the message board said, and I said it earlier in the show, but Jason, I want you to hourglass it. But are quarterback coaches really that important?
Yes. I mean,
And
they
that's
could go
where
back a few shows on this, right? Where I talked about Daryl Dickey and the absolute program sabotage that I watched in person, that the difference a bad quarterback coach can make, to where go back and watch Chris Ricks at Florida State as a redshirt freshman, then watch him as a redshirt sophomore, a redshirt junior, and a redshirt senior, and he got worse every year. And it wasn't because he didn't work hard. It wasn't because because all of a sudden, complete talent drop off around him or whatever. Quarterback coaching matters a lot. And so much of it is being able to boil things down for your player so that he understands where his eyes need to be, when the ball needs to be out, and that he does all of that with great confidence while also not taking risks. And it's just like a coaching a point guard. You want a guy who's going to put the ball where guys are going to be open, to throw guys open, see passing lanes and all that, but not take stupid risks. Some coaches are better at inculcating that in their point guards than others. Some coaches, they get in their own point guards' heads, and it doesn't work well. Good quarterback coaches consistently produce good quarterbacks. And just think about it. Tedford, look at the quarterbacks that he put out for, like 12 solid years. Look at Jimbo Fisher and the quarterbacks that he put out year after year after year, finding ways, even with guys that weren't necessarily that talented, getting them to perform at absolute max. And one of the reasons, by the way, that Jimbo Fisher's quarterbacks, when they got to the NFL, ended up disappointing was because they did such a good job of maxing out what they could do in college. There's not much headroom once they got to the NFL to improve. So you look at that, and there's a reason. Mark Richt, quarterback after quarterback, hit with him. Quarterback coach is maybe the most important coach among the assistant coaches, the non-coordinator assistant coaches in college football. I'd say it's right there with offensive line coach. You have to have somebody who knows how to coach quarterbacks to consistently be good at that position. And yeah, I mean, there are just different things you have to do. You have to get guys, you have to be able to build the clock in your guy's head to get the ball out. And there's all sorts of ways of doing this. Creative quarterback coaches will have a air horn or something in practice if their guy's not getting it out quick enough to where, stopwatch goes off and the air horn goes off. Their guy's going to get the ball out. That stuff matters. And yes, the quarterback coach matters a lot in college football.
There you go. Have fun on that thread, debating that on the Inside Carolina message boards. And as we talk about, and as I get out of this show, Drake May currently 23 of 28 for 290, 257, and a touchdown. The Patriots are beating the Jets 21-14.
That boy good.
I wish I'd got in on that when he was like plus 3,000 for MVP, and now he's the betting favorite. He's cruising to it. Greg Barnes, any last thoughts?
No, not at all.
Go defense.
It's going to be a blast. It's going to be one to enjoy.
We shall be there to cover it. Inside Carolina, all on the scene in Wake Forest tomorrow. There's a basketball announcement. A big recruit's going to announce tomorrow. We'll see what happens with that. Inside Carolina will have complete coverage of that. There's also a basketball game tomorrow night. I'll do a post game with Rob Harrington. Then we'll have Inside Carolina Live. Then we'll have the day after. Just so much coverage here at Inside Carolina. And make sure you go to InsideCarolina.com to get your subscription if you have not already. Like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, all the good stuff to get Greg Barnes, Jason Staples, Tommy Ashley, Johnny T-Shirt. Everybody stay safe. Peace.
Go ACC.